The Hell's politics have always been volatile, for lack of a better word, but even more so after the events of the Crown War. Some outsider swoops in, slaughtering Asmodeus like some common mortal, and all hell breaks loose, almost literally on a few occasions. But instead of slaughtering the opposition like everyone expected of Thulgarian after what they'd done to Asmodeus, and arguably what was done to the old King of the Hells was a mercy compared to the fate of the opposers of the new king. Exile. But not in the sense you're thinking. Kicking demons and devils out of hell would be more of a reward than anything else. Plus, your typical Hellspawn doesn't tend to have the most sound of morals. Rather than just ejecting them out of the hells, they were bound and sealed within mortal bloodlines, forced to live out the rest of their days until their very souls died trapped inside some human. The 7 deadly sins, the hell's equivalent of royalty, were of the many to be bound to mortals. The descendants they left behind scrambled for what little power they could in their absence, forming the 7 great houses, each named after the respective matriarch. Most notably, House Sloth. Unlike their namesake, House Sloth were of the most vigilant in the grab for power. Well, not in their entirety. The house's heir wasn't exactly on board. They didn't exactly take pride in being handed the keys to a house that was actively on fire. Yes, a good number of the living accommodations in the Hells happened to be on fire, but I was speaking figuratively rather than literally. You get my point. I'm not sure what exactly they expected from a direct descendant of Sloth, but rather than take the responsibility being thrust upon them in stride, for the betterment of the house, they ran. For the first time in the century after the great houses were established, they felt in control and at peace. Well, as much as you could be in the deepest part of the Everbarons. Living in the Hell's Wasteland wasn't exactly lavish living in the slightest, but they managed. All manner of oddities and monstrosities lived out here, and they stumbled upon their fair share, but one stuck out amongst them. A book they'd found in an abandoned library, labeled Nictomancy. It looked like a spell book, but not belonging to any type of magic they'd heard of. Originally, they stowed the book away, wary of the seemingly forgotten magic, but day after day, they found themselves flipping through its pages, until they began wielding the spells themselves, quickly finding out it was a form of dark magic, literally. The spells and techniques in the book mostly focused on manipulating shadows or darkness. However, daily use of Nictomancy was producing yet another oddity. Their skin was turning just as black as the darkness they were bending to their will. It started with the tips of their fingers, but quickly spread to their hands and moved up their forearm after more than a decade of constant practice. The revelation that the magic they were wielding was darkening their skin didn't deter them in the slightest, even after the darkness had spread most of the way up their arms. They could feel their power growing, swelling inside them as they gave their flesh to the hungry dark. They knew not what awaited them once they had no more flesh to give, but they knew whatever power came from giving themselves fully to the void might very well be the thing that let them finally escape the Hells and leave its volatile politics behind.